of Management Studies, IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 017 Advanced Strategic Management for MBA program. Presenting Block 1, Introduction to Corporate Management. Unit 2, Corporate Policy, Part 1.
Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to explain the concept of corporate policy and its features, list out the determinants of corporate policy, develop an understanding about the scope and need for corporate policy, explain the steps in formulation of policy, discuss the various types of corporate policy, and describe the significance of corporate policy. Introduction. The organization sets the objectives and works towards their achievement. Once these objectives are defined and strategies determined, certain policies have to be made to put them into action. Corporate policies act as a guide to action. They provide the framework within which an organization has to meet its corporate objectives. The policy points out the direction in which the company ought to go. Some of the policy statements are: we promote employees on the basis of experience. We sell televisions only for cash. In each of these statements, one could understand that there is a problem and the policies help as a guide for finding the solution. Some policies are just broad guidelines, while some can be more specific. According to Kuntz and O'Donnell, policies are plans in that they are general statements of principles which guide the thinking, decision-making, and action in an organization. Policies aid in decision-making and are the basis for procedures. They are responsibilities of top management. Policies are applied in long-range planning and are directly related to goals. They are concerned with estimating availability of resources, their procurement, their augmentation, and their efficient utilization. In this unit, we shall discuss the concept, features, scope, and essentials of a policy. The classification of policies has also been discussed. In this era of competition and dynamic environment, the need and importance of policies has also been explained along with the formulation process. Concept and meaning of corporate policy. Corporate policy is the guidepost to decision making. It helps in the managerial thinking process and thus leads to the efficient and effective attainment of the objectives of an organization. Corporate policy has been defined as management's expressed or implied intent to govern action in the pursuit of the company's objectives. Corporate policy clarifies the intention of management in dealing with the various problems faced. It gives the managers a transparent guideline to take their decisions by being on the safe side. Corporate policy helps the manager in identification of the solutions to the problem. It provides the framework in which he has to take the decisions. The distinct views regarding policies can be categorized into the following three broad groups. First, the first category holds the opinion that policy and strategy are synonymous. Corporate policy has been defined as William Gluck as management policy is long-range planning. For all practical purposes, management policy, long-range planning, and strategic management means the same thing. However, this view is quite controversial as strategy and corporate policy do not mean the same thing. Strategy includes awareness of the mission, purpose, and objectives. It has been defined as the determination of basic long-term goals and objectives of an enterprise and the allocation of resources necessary to carry out these goals, while policies are statements or a commonly accepted understandings of decision-making and are thought-oriented guidelines. Therefore, strategy and corporate policy cannot be used interchangeably as there is a clear line of differentiation between two terms. The second group of experts views corporate policy as the process of implementing strategy. In the words of Frank I. Payne and William Norms, policies guide and channels the implementation of strategy and prescribe how processes within the organization will function and be administered. Thus, the term policy refers to organization procedures, practices, and structures concerned with implementing and executing strategy. Supporting this view, Robert Murdrick has defined corporate policy as a policy establishes guidelines and limits of discretionary action by individuals responsible for implementing the overall plan. The view represents corporate policy to be restrictive, laying stress only on the tactical side and ignoring the strategic dimensions. The third view considers corporate policy to be decisions regarding the future of an organization. In this view, Robert J. Mockler defines corporate policy as strategic guidelines for action. They spell out what can and what cannot be done in all areas of a company's operation. According to the Policy Manual of General Electric Company, policy is definition of common purpose for organization components of the company for benefit of those responsible for implementation, exercise discretion, and good judgment in appraising and deciding among alternative courses of action. These views of different management scholars differ because of following reasons. First, there is no clear differentiation of policy from other elements of planning. Second, there are different policies made at different levels of management for directing executives. Third, corporate policy encompasses and relates to the entire process of planning. Thus, corporate policy focuses on the guidelines used for decision making and putting them into actions. It consists of principles along with rules of action that provides for successful achievement of corporate objectives. Features of corporate policy. After understanding the concept of corporate policy, following features can be identified. General statement of principles. Policies are general statement of principles followed by corporate for the attainment of organizational objectives. These principles provide a guide to action for the executives at different levels. Long-term perspective. Corporate policies have a long life and are formulated with a long-term perspective. They provide stability to the organization. Achievement of objectives. Corporate policy is aimed at the fulfillment of organizational objectives. They provide a framework for action and thus help the executives to work towards the set goals. Qualitative, conditional, and general statements. Corporate policy statements are qualitative in nature. They are conditional and defined in general manner. These statements use words as to maintain, to follow, to provide, etc. They can be specific at times, but most of the times, a corporate policy tends to be general. Fifth, guide for repetitive operations. Corporate policies are formulated to act as a guide for repetitive day-to-day operations. They are best as a guide for the activities that occur frequently or repeatedly. Sixth, hierarchy. Corporate policies have an hierarchy that is for each set of objectives at each level of management. There is a set of policies. The top management determines the basic overall policy. Then the divisional and/or departmental policies are determined by the middle level management, and lower level policies are more specific and have a shorter time horizon than policies at higher levels. 7. Decision-making process. Corporate policy is a decision-making process. In formulating corporate policy, one has to make choices, and the choices is influenced by the interests and attitudes of managers engaged in making the policies. 8th, mutual application. Corporate policies are meant for mutual applications by subordinates. They are made for some specific situation and have to be applied by the members of the organization. Ninth, unified structure. Corporate policies tend to provide predetermined issues and thus avoid repeated analysis. They provide a unified structure to other types of plans and help managers in delegating authority and having control over the activities. 10th, positive declaration. Corporate policy is a positive declaration and a command to its followers. It acts as a motivator for the people following it, and thus they work towards the attainment of the objectives efficiently and effectively. The corporate policy lays down the values which dominate organizations' actions. Determinants of corporate policy. The corporate policy of an organization is influenced by various interrelated and interacting factors. These factors can be classified as internal and external factors. The determinants which are internal to the firm or organization and which influence the decisions directly are known as the internal factors. External factors include all those factors which act from outside the firm and influence the organization externally. We discuss these determinants one by one here. Internal determinants. The determinants include the corporate mission, corporate objectives, corporate resources, and the management values, which are all internal to the organization and play a very important role in the formulation of corporate policy. First, corporate policy. The policy maker has to understand the corporate mission so that the policy is in tune with it. Corporate mission provides the company with the meaning for which it exists and operates. Because policy provides guidelines for managerial action, it has to be made in a manner that it accomplishes the corporate mission. Second, corporate objectives. Another internal determinant of corporate policy is the corporate objectives. All organizations frame organizational objectives and work towards their achievement. Policymakers must take into account the economic, financial, and other objectives of the company. Third, the resources. The organization has to carry out its activities keeping in mind the resources it has. The corporate policy has to identify the various resources available and then only can it be made sound. The size of plants, capital structure, liquidity position, personal skills and expertise, competitive position, nature of products, etc. all help in the formulation of corporate policy. Fourth, management values. Corporate policy reflects the values imbibed in the organization. The personal values of the managers forming corporate policy influence its formulation. Management values differ from organization to organization. It is an important determinant of corporate policy. External determinants. These include the forces external to the firm. The external determinants of corporate policy are industry structure, economic environment, political environment, social environment, and technology. First, industry structure. The formulation of corporate policy is influenced by the industry in which the firm exists. The structure of industry comprises of size of firms, the entry barriers, numbers of competitors, etc. The corporate policy is formulated keeping in mind competitors, strategies, policies, etc. Second, economic environment. Economic environment comprises of the demand, supply, price trends, the national income, availability of inputs, the various institutions, etc. It includes all these factors which influence the policies of the firm. Therefore, it becomes one of the most important determinants of corporate policy. Third, political environment. The firm has to carry out its activities in accordance with the government regulations and policies. If these are not complied with, the firm would not be able to meet its objectives in an efficient manner. The various policies like monetary policy, fiscal policy, credit policy influence the corporate policy of the firm. Fourth, social environment. The firm affects various sections of the society. The various sections in turn influence the activities of the firm. The social beliefs of the managers influence policies. The religious, cultural, and ethnic dimensions have to be dealt with while formulating policies of an organization. Fifth, technology. Every now and then, new technologies are entering the market. An organization has to change with the changes in the environment. It has to remain up to date with respect to technology it uses. Thus, technology also plays an important role in formulation of corporate policy. Scope of corporate policy. Corporate policies are statements of guidelines for corporate thinking and action. They lay down the approach before the management to deal with the challenges in the environment. They cover the following broad areas that affect the decisions of the organization. First, corporate policy consists of a variety of subjects that affects various interest groups in the organization and outside it. Second, corporate policy is concerned with the various functional areas like production, human resources, marketing, and finance. Third, we can understand corporate policy areas in two broad categories: major and minor policies. The overall objectives, procedures, and control are covered in major policies. These policies are concerned with each and every aspect of the organization, its structure, its financial status, its production stature, its human resources, and all those issues which require attention like mergers, research, expansion, etc. Basically, the top management is involved in the framing of such major policies. Further, the operations and activities are also carried out by executives so that the organizational objectives are met. The minor policies are concerned with each segment of the organization with emphasis on details and procedures. These policies are part of the major policies. The operational control can be made possible only if the minor policies are implemented efficiently. The minor policies are concerned with the day-to-day operations and are decided at the departmental levels. The minor policies may cover relations with dealers, discount rates, terms of credit, etc. Thus, corporate policies cover a wide range of subjects, ranging from operational level policies to the top level policies.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 016 International Business Management. Course Coordinator Professor G. Subayama. Voiceover by Chitra. Edited by Ashok Sharma. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.